Hello, Leo soul. Have you been feeling like something, or someone, is quietly draining your spark, just when you were about to rise? If so, this message found you for a reason. This isn't just a cosmic update. It's a spiritual alert. One that carries weight, urgency, and an invitation for you to come back home to yourself. Welcome to Eternal Mindfulness, where energy meets awareness and your higher self is always center stage. If you clicked on this video, I want you to know, there's a divine reason. Maybe you've been second-guessing yourself. Maybe your clarity has dimmed. Or maybe you've felt a strange resistance around your finances, your focus, or even your sense of direction. Between May 19th and 21st, 2025, the universe is sounding an alarm bell, but not in fear. In awakening. During this period, an energy presence linked to someone whose name begins with the letter S may be subtly, perhaps even unknowingly, interfering with your money flow and mental alignment. It might come in the form of distraction, doubt, or emotional fog. But here's the truth, it's not about them. It's about how you respond. What makes this situation more complicated is that the energy doesn't come with warning signs. This person may be kind, helpful, or familiar. But something about their vibration doesn't align with your path anymore. And your spirit knows it, even if your mind keeps making excuses. I'm not here to tell you who to cut off or what to fear. I'm here to guide you to your own clarity, because you already feel the shift happening inside you, don't you? Take a quiet moment. Inhale deeply. Now think about the last conversation or interaction that left you feeling smaller, not stronger. Was it subtle? Was it from someone close? Did it leave you questioning your next step? That's where we begin. Because this video isn't about exposing anyone. It's about revealing your own intuitive truth. The one you've had all along. And before we dive into this journey together, let me say something from the deepest part of my being. Thank you. Your time, your presence here, it matters more than you know. Every view, every share, every ounce of energy you offer this channel allows Eternal Mindfulness to continue doing what we were born to do, deliver soul-shifting, reality-bending, heart-opening messages like this one. You being here means something is already shifting within you. So instead of commenting a number today, I invite you to simply reflect. Ask yourself, why did this video find me right now? What truth have I been avoiding that my soul is ready to finally face? And if something stirs, maybe a memory, maybe a name, maybe a long-suppressed knowing, don't push it away. Let it rise. You don't have to act on anything yet. Just listen. Because when we listen, we remember. And when we remember who we are, we stop letting people, or energies, redirect our fate. Stay with me until the very end, Leo. Because this message isn't just meant to reveal a block. It's meant to hand you back your power. Let's begin the journey. Together. Sometimes the echoes we feel in our energy field are not accidents or random shifts in mood. They are traces, whispers, and psychic imprints left behind by others who are still thinking about us, even when they no longer stand beside us. You may have noticed a subtle tightness in your chest lately, or a sense of heaviness as if someone is silently calling your name, not in love, but in unrest. This is not paranoia. It is perception. There are times when our names are spoken in spaces where the energy is dense, clouded by envy, comparison, or unprocessed wounds. These are not always malicious actions, but they are often unconscious, and their ripple effect is real. In this particular moment in the cosmos, Leo, the presence of someone from your past is resurfacing, not physically, but energetically. Their thoughts have returned to you. Maybe through a memory, maybe through regret, or maybe through comparison. But their focus is not neutral. The cards, particularly the Five of Swords, reveal that the intention behind their thoughts is neither kind nor clean. It carries the subtle charge of conflict, silent rivalry, unresolved pain, or even the desire to see you stumble. Why would someone wish that upon you? Often, it has nothing to do with you, and everything to do with the mirror your presence becomes. When your growth triggers someone else's stuckness, they might unconsciously project their pain outward. It's not your fault. And it's not your job to carry that energy. Just as a calm lake reflects the sky only when undisturbed, your clarity comes when you release the emotional sediment that isn't yours. This is not the time to defend yourself or retaliate. The highest strength lies in awareness, not reaction. Remember that even a flame can burn itself out if it tries to battle every breeze. What you need is not confrontation. What you need is discernment. Ask yourself, have you been feeling less confident lately? Like you're questioning decisions you previously felt sure about? That's often how energetic interference shows up, not as thunder, but as fog. And fog only lifts when the sun rises, which in your case, is the clarity of your inner knowing. Your job now is not to go looking for this person. You don't need to name them aloud. The truth is already within you. What you need is space. Breath. A moment of deep stillness to let your own truth come back to the surface. Let their energy be their own to manage. Release the urge to prove, to be seen, or to be validated by someone whose love was conditional to begin with. There's an ancient teaching that says, when someone harms you, and you carry it, you become the second wound. But when you witness it and choose not to absorb it, you return to freedom. That is the path of wise sovereignty. So instead of absorbing what's been cast toward you, redirect your attention inward. Affirm to yourself with steady truth, I don't need the approval of those who don't see me clearly. My light is not negotiable. Then gently let it go. Not because they deserve peace, but because you do. This, Leo, is your power, not to control how others feel about your success or your path, but to remain unshaken in the brilliance of your becoming. The person who tries to summon your name in shadows doesn't know that you've long stopped living in the dark. There are moments when uncertainty doesn't arrive like a storm, but rather like a quiet fog, soft, subtle, and hard to detect until you realize you can no longer see the road ahead. When someone's presence enters your energetic field without love, without clarity, and especially without transparency, it doesn't always come as aggression. It often appears as confusion. Not through loud confrontation, but through quiet influence that chips away at your inner knowing. And when that influence comes from someone you've once trusted or allowed close, especially someone whose name begins with the letter S, it becomes harder to recognize because part of you may still be trying to justify it. This kind of interference rarely looks like direct harm. It looks like second-guessing yourself in situations you would have once handled confidently. It looks like hesitating when opportunity knocks, even though you prayed for it just days ago. It looks like holding back your ideas, softening your voice, or questioning whether your dreams are too much. These are not signs of failure. They are signs that something, or someone, has nudged your energy out of alignment with your natural Leo fire. Astrologically, Leo is ruled by the sun, the source of light, warmth, clarity, and purpose. When your inner sun becomes obscured, it is often due to emotional clouds formed by external projections. The Seven of Cups appears here not just as a tarot card, but as a reflection of how illusion enters when boundaries are thin. Each cup looks inviting, but not all hold truth. Some are temptations, some are distractions, and some are just beautiful masks. The key is not to analyze every option, but to remember what is true. In teachings passed down from ancient sages, there is a reminder: confusion is often the result of holding too tightly to what is impermanent. When we grip outcomes, opinions, or even approval from others, we stop listening to what is quietly constant, the voice within. And that voice doesn't shout. It doesn't compete. It simply waits for your return. So if you're finding yourself doubting your path right now, don't panic. And more importantly, don't rush. Pause. Breathe. Reflect. Ask gently, what part of me forgot how far I've come? Who, or what, have I allowed to plant seeds of doubt in soil that once bloomed with conviction? There is no need to call anyone out or create drama. Energy doesn't need drama to be redirected. It only requires clarity. And clarity comes when you begin to name what is already known to your heart. Write it down if you must. Name 3 truths about who you are. Not roles, not achievements, but unshakable inner truths. It could be, I am courageous. I am worthy of being seen. I am whole even when I am uncertain. Let these truths become your anchor as you move through the fog. Because not every question deserves your energy, and not every voice deserves your trust. Some people thrive in your confusion because your clarity reminds them of their own chaos. But you don't have to carry that weight. You don't have to figure everything out at once. You only need to take the next step from a place of remembering, not reacting. The presence of S in your energy field may not be something you can avoid right now. But what you can choose is how much access they have to your inner world. Doubt may come. Fog may return. But the sun, your sun, will rise again. And when it does, everything that once felt unclear will reveal itself for what it truly is. When financial energy begins to move toward you, it doesn't always feel like excitement. Sometimes, it feels like pressure, confusion, or even fear. That's because abundance isn't just about receiving, it's also about discerning what must be cleared before the reward can land. For Leo, whose ruling planet is the radiant sun, clarity is everything. But between May 19th and 21st, a significant astrological tension arises as the Sun stands opposite Neptune. This planetary interaction creates what many refer to as a spiritual blind spot, a time when perception can be colored by illusion, wishful thinking, or misplaced trust. And when this occurs in the realm of money and decision-making, it becomes vital to pause, observe, and wait before taking action. You may begin to notice that advice which once sounded reassuring suddenly feels murky. Ideas that once lit you up now leave you unsettled. People who offer guidance may seem helpful, but something about their timing, or tone, causes you to question your own instinct. This is not a sign of weakness. It is the natural effect of conflicting energy interfering with your solar wisdom. The King of Pentacles, drawn as the tarot representation for this transit, signals immense potential. It speaks of wealth, mastery, and long-term stability. But it also demands grounding. This card is not about quick gains. It is about wise stewardship. And that means knowing when to wait, when to act, and most importantly, when to guard your energy. Energetically, Leo thrives when anchored in self-trust. Yet when Neptune clouds the sun's illumination, even a Leo may start to rely too much on outer voices. This is where the real caution lies. Because not all advice is neutral, and not all voices are meant for you. Especially during this window, it's possible that someone, perhaps even the same presence whose name begins with S, is unintentionally pushing you toward choices that don't align with your truth. They may be encouraging you to go for it, or to play it safe, but either extreme can derail you if it doesn't arise from your own clarity. One of the quiet teachings about discernment reminds us that stillness is a form of protection. Like the water that becomes clear only when left undisturbed, your judgment becomes most accurate when not constantly stirred by external input. That's why it's important now to detox not only your body, but your mind. Step away from the noise. Disconnect from the constant influx of opinions. Even a short break from digital platforms can give your nervous system the silence it needs to hear your inner voice again. Use this time to hydrate your awareness, literally and energetically. Simple practices, like drinking warm lemon water and allowing your thoughts to settle without distraction, help you return to a grounded state. And from there, financial clarity follows naturally. You don't need to figure out every step right now. You only need to protect the seed of your intention until the moment to act becomes undeniably clear. The number 4 becomes especially important during this phase. In numerology, it represents the foundation, both physical and emotional. Think of it as your inner architecture, the structure upon which all abundance is built. Before wealth can arrive, the structure must be sound. And sometimes, that means patching cracks caused by others' influence, even when it seemed harmless at first. Your power lies not in chasing the opportunity, but in standing still long enough to recognize what's truly meant for you. Let the sapphire blue frequency guide your calm. Let the doubt dissolve. Your clarity is returning. And when it does, Leo, you won't just walk toward your abundance. You'll own it. Sometimes, what lingers isn't the presence of someone, but their attention. You might believe they've moved on, blocked, deleted, disappeared from your everyday experience. But the energy doesn't lie. There's a current, a quiet pull, a sense of being watched when no one's looking. For Leo, a sign so attuned to visibility and the unspoken feedback of others, this type of energetic interference doesn't go unnoticed for long. It hums in the background. It shows up as subtle tension when you're posting something joyful. It appears in your dreams, or in the hesitations you feel when you try to open your heart again. What's particularly complex about this moment is that the person you've tried to release, possibly someone whose name starts with S, or who was entangled in your past through that very initial, has not truly let you go. They may not reach out directly. In fact, they may pretend they've detached completely. But the Page of Swords tells a different story. This is the observer. The one who watches from a distance, sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with longing, but often without the courage to clarify their true emotions. You may notice patterns repeating. A text that seems too coincidental. A profile view on your story that raises a brow. Or even real-life run-ins that feel strangely orchestrated. These events may be small, but their emotional weight is not. They leave you wondering if you've really moved on, or if you're just pretending better than they are. And perhaps, even more importantly, their subtle reappearances might start to cloud your view of what's next, of the love that is actually trying to enter your life now. There's a saying that goes, as long as the cup is full of yesterday's tea, you cannot taste today's. And this applies so clearly here. Because when old connections remain energetically unresolved, they don't just fade into silence, they compete with new possibilities. They whisper doubt when trust begins to grow. They hold up mirrors not to reflect love, but to remind you of wounds. But healing doesn't come from revisiting the same script. It comes from choosing a new one. Someone new is approaching. And unlike the past, this person won't require performance. You won't need to explain the parts of you that are quiet, guarded, or still healing. They won't be afraid of your depth or your silence. They won't ask you to shrink. Instead, they will offer presence. And presence, when real, feels like peace, not questioning. It feels like freedom, not monitoring. But to allow this new energy in, you must be willing to withdraw your awareness from what no longer nurtures you. That doesn't mean resentment. It simply means release. Like the teachings of the forest, when a tree sheds its leaves, it doesn't mourn each one. It knows the falling is necessary for something new to take form. And so must you let go, not with bitterness, but with gratitude that something clearer is on its way. As you move forward, notice what makes you feel small. What makes you unsure of your own beauty? Then ask yourself, who benefits when I doubt my worth? That question alone may unravel the attachment. And if you feel yourself hesitating to love again, don't force your heart to open. Just make sure it's not closing because someone from the past is still knocking quietly on the door. Sometimes letting go is not a dramatic goodbye. It's a quiet decision not to look back. And from that stillness, the right one will arrive, not to fix you, but to see you. Even when you say nothing at all. What often disturbs us most isn't what's obvious, but what hides in plain sight, disguised as care, cloaked in charm, delivered with just enough softness to make us question our own instinct. As this energetic cycle deepens, it becomes important to understand that not all obstacles appear as enemies. Some come wrapped in concern. Some smile. Some even sound like support. But your body knows the difference. And right now, Leo, your body has been speaking. The person whose name begins with S may already be someone you've considered. But don't rush to conclusions. Because the real concern is not always the most visible presence, it's often the one you're still justifying. The Devil card, appearing at this stage of the reading, doesn't represent some dark, external force. It points to subtle control, often exerted through guilt, obligation, or carefully phrased advice that slowly pulls you off your center. This energy shows up as the voice that asks what you're planning, but never offers anything of their own. The one who gives advice that leaves you unsettled. The person who tells you they're just looking out for you, yet somehow, you always feel smaller after speaking with them. These people rarely act out of conscious malice. More often, they're operating from their own patterns, deep-seated fears of being left behind, of losing relevance, or of watching someone else succeed where they have not. And while you are not responsible for their healing, you are responsible for how long you let that vibration live rent-free in your mental space. Here's the thing, even the most radiant heart can be influenced if it's constantly being questioned. Doubt, especially when offered under the disguise of love, is one of the most destabilizing forces in human connection. And the longer you keep explaining yourself to someone who isn't truly listening, the more you drift from the steady truth of who you are. This is why spiritual practice reminds us to stay anchored in awareness, not to fight illusion with force, but to recognize illusion with clarity. So what can you do with this awareness? Begin with stillness. Not to retreat in fear, but to return to discernment. Find 10 minutes at night to sit quietly. Let your breath lengthen. And gently affirm, I am protected from all forms of subtle control. I trust the voice within me. These words are not magic spells, they are invitations. Invitations for your nervous system to settle. For your intuition to rise. Then, reflect. Write down 3 moments, recent ones, when you shifted a decision, delayed a choice, or silenced your excitement simply because someone else expressed doubt. Not because they knew better, but because they made you question if you did. Those small moments are the breadcrumbs that lead back to your power. As May 20th arrives, it would be wise to create some distance. Not to punish, but to listen better. Spend the day in quiet, if you can. Reduce your digital exposure. Take a walk alone. Observe who reaches out, and who grows silent. Notice what thoughts return when the noise fades. That's often where truth lives, in the pauses between distraction. Ultimately, this is not about turning away from people. It's about turning toward yourself. Because someone with S in their name may be offering you advice, but the real question is, do they feel lighter, or heavier, after they speak? Do you feel expanded, or dimmed? When you answer that with honesty, the fog lifts. And when the fog lifts, Leo, you stop being someone's background story and return to being the main character in your own. If you're still here, still listening, still holding space for these final words, then I believe something within you has already shifted. Maybe it's not loud. Maybe it doesn't yet have a name. But it's there, that subtle recognition that you've outgrown the version of yourself that kept bending just to make others comfortable. You've seen what happens when your light dims for the sake of keeping the peace. And now, you're remembering what it feels like to shine without apology. Someone with the letter S may have had a louder voice in your mind than you realized. Not because they were wiser, but because they knew how to make you doubt your own knowing. But Leo, you were never meant to walk in someone else's shadow. You are the fire. You are the one meant to illuminate the path, not just for others, but for yourself. And the moment you stop waiting for permission, the entire energy around you will shift. So let's take this moment, from May 19th to 21st, as sacred. A time to gently retrieve every part of you that was handed away too easily. Not with regret, but with reverence. Because you gave those parts of yourself in love, in trust, in hope. And now, you call them home. Ask yourself gently, whose words have shaped your decisions more than your own truth? Who leaves you feeling uncertain after every interaction, even if their words sound kind? And what would it look like to set down that weight, not in anger, but in peace? You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to explain yourself anymore. What you do need is space, space to feel, to hear yourself clearly, and to choose what's aligned. If clarity is a muscle, this is your moment to strengthen it. And you strengthen it every time you choose silence over people-pleasing, alignment over approval, peace over chaos disguised as care. So here's a small practice. Write down one thing you're ready to release, a thought, a name, a habit of self-betrayal. Then, write down a number that just popped into your mind. That's your angel number today, your signal from the universe that you're not doing this alone. And finally, whisper this affirmation to yourself. I choose to step out of the shadows of false concern. I am the light, and I no longer doubt that truth. Your presence here means more than you know. Every time you watch, like, share, or subscribe to this channel, you're sending a ripple out into the universe that says, I'm ready to grow. And I see you. I honor that choice. I thank you deeply for being here and allowing eternal mindfulness to walk beside you on this path of awakening. The world doesn't need a watered-down version of you. It doesn't need your silence or your shrinkage. The world needs you, fully ignited, deeply rooted, and unshakably honest. Let this be the moment you choose yourself not as a reaction, but as a return. And if these words reached you at the right time, I'd love to hear what part of your truth they touched. Drop it in the comments, your release, your angel number, or simply, I'm reclaiming my light. Because once you speak it, you begin to embody it. You were never meant to be quiet, Leo. You were meant to lead, not by force, but by the boldness of being your truest self. Let's meet there. Let's rise together.